You've pressed the red button. Now, here's something of no value.
So, Stewart, this show was about books. How many books have you actually read?
In length, I've probably read about 24 feet of books, I think. Because when I read a book, I put it on a particular set of shelves, and then as I grow older, I like to be able to look and think, well, I've read that length of books. I'm not interested in reading long books, like, say, Ulysses or War and Peace.
Books.
They're thick, yeah.
They're
I try and read
books.
as many short books as possible, because then I can go, oh, I've read 1,000 books, whereas if I'd read a lot of long books, it would be less books. Really, it's about, you want someone to walk in to the flat and go, oh, look, have you read all those books? And you go, yeah, I have. Yeah. I mean, ideally, you'd have a really short, fat but long book. You put one sentence on a page and the book would be that long. I mean, if you think about that on my shelf, how much space that would take up and how much more impressive it would look. It would make the breadth of my reading look.
So if there's one sentence per page and
one
then maybe 1,000 pages.
1,000 pages,
So
and you have to turn it over.
yeah.
You'd have to, they could be this wide in the actual act of reading.
Now, you have had a go at Chris Smiles, now, and indeed Russell Brand. What have they done to you, and what's Russell Brand done to you specifically, or to your granddaughter?
Well, Russell Brand's had the audacity to start stand-up much later than I did and to do much better. And what I've been able to do is conceal my jealousy and resentment of that as a sort of amusing and apparently reasonable attack on his literary career and celebrity status. But actually, behind that is a genuine resentment. It's not just a bit of fun. It's I'm consumed with feelings of professional and sexual jealousy for him. And you know, when you watch the programme, you'll think, oh, he's just having a laugh. But if you watch it again, you can see in that bit, I think, a level of just genuine, it's like a confusion mixed with a sort of lust as well for him.
A lust for him?
A lust for him against your will. Because he's, you know, it's sort of, and I think he arouses those feelings in a lot of people, and I think people watching it will relate to that, and certainly that was my intention for those 3 or 4 lines about him.
The world of books used to be a magical thing, didn't it, the world of books? But in 1439, when Johann Gutenberg invented the printing press, could he ever have foreseen the nightmare scenario where one day every single person in Britain would own their own copy of Russell Brand's My Bookie Wook? You can read Russell Brand's autobiography and dismiss it as rubbish, if you like. Or you can dismiss it as rubbish without reading it to save time, if you prefer.
It's like a covert message to him. You know, when you're in the playground and you might run up and pinch the very girl that you fancied as a child to kind of get their attention. It's sort of like, it's sending out a message to him, going, what do you think of this? You know, and I'm interested to see what will come back. The 4 years that I've spent trying to get this done is built around trying to send out that one message to Russell Brand, like Cupid's dart it is sent towards his face.
Okay, and are you planning over the next 10, 15, 20 years other projects, whether they're film, television, whatever, in which you will follow up?
Yeah, I mean, what do you think, given your experience in television, how quickly do you think we would hear whether there'd be a second series of this commissioned?
Well, you should have heard by now.
So, in other words, I ought to be, I can't pin my hopes of communicating with him on covert messages concealed in a possible second series of this show.
If you've not heard by now, no.
So I should be moving into other areas of the arts.
I think stage or something.
Or dance.
Dance. Now, you've spent a lot of time slagging people off who've written books, but you've written a book, haven't you? Got a copy here. Here it is. It's called The Perfect Fool.
Yeah.
Which I notice is doing less well than the book written by Chris Smiles.
Oh, of course it is, yeah.
Which makes Chris Smiles a better writer.
In terms of sales, it does, you know.
If we analyse some of the writing in the same way that you've analysed Chris Smiles' writing style, literary style, and indeed, or Dan Brown, the opening sentences go, London, long after midnight, the street people agree there runs a train. So, my first question really is, London. It's hardly original, isn't it? Where are you from?
What, as a starting line?
Yeah, well, where are you from?
Well, I was from the Midlands originally, but...
where do you live now?
Well, I live in Hackney in North East London.
Which is in London.
I didn't go on a terribly long mental journey, admittedly.
No.
Also,
after midnight.
Yeah, well, what I've learned from you doing this to me is it's easy to take it's easy to take any section of text
Well,
and
it
read
is,
it in a
yeah.
slightly sarcastic voice.
There runs a
And-
train. Trains don't have legs.
Well, run is can mean running can mean that the service was put on. It means that the train runs. It doesn't have legs, but running doesn't necessarily only apply to legs.
Yes, but if you want to make that clear, you should
Yeah.
have a footnote or something. Just
Yeah,
to explain
you're right.
That.
Yeah.
Your celebrity endorsement at the front is Observer.
Yeah,
Observer.
yeah. That was just someone that happened to notice the book and
Yeah.
imagined what it might have been like.
I mean, if you could have someone endorse your book now, who would it be?
It would be Adrian Chiles.
Okay.
Yeah, who I think is probably the person that is most trusted by British people. I think he's managed to strike a balance between. He's not like a know-it-all, is he? He's like he would be the cleverest bloke in the pub, the person that
He's know a bit of it. He's a know a bit of it.
No, a bit of it. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think that's what people. I don't think people like experts. I think they're suspicious of them now, and I think they want someone that looks like they might know. It's interesting that he's come along in the last year or so, just as I get to do some television, because I think he's sort of redefined what it means to be a television personality, and I think if there's all through the writing of the series and in the performing and in the kind of faces that I made, as I said the words, and in the kind of tones I tried to put into the saying of the words, I always was thinking of Adrian Chiles at the back of my mind, that I should try and be, for comedy, what Adrian Chiles is for whatever it is that he is of.
Yes. Do you
And I
think we're
think-
living in a Chilesian Britain?
Well, I think it's post-Chilesian.
It's post-Chilesian.
already. And I think that he's the start of that.
So we're in a post-Chilesian world.
Yeah.
Prior to that, what major figure had the most cultural impact?
For me, I don't think there was anyone before Adrian Chiles.
Oh, fine.
I think
Okay,
there
fine.
was a void, and he's filled that void.
Okay.
And now that we have him, we wonder what we were doing before. For the previous 2,000 years of human civilization, there was a feeling something wasn't right, and it is right now.
You insulted Dan Brown for being inarticulate, and yet we've got documentary evidence of you failing to mock him coherently. We just watch this here.
The worst published writer in the world today is actually also one of the world's most successful published writers, Dan Brown. Dan Brown is not a good writer. The Da Vinci Code is not literature. Dan Brown writes sentences like, sorry, I've had a complete blank there. It's very unprofessional. But with these kind of programmes, people are always looking for something for the DVD extras. I'm sure that will make a great one.
Do you really think of yourself as a wordsmith compared to Dan Brown?
Well, compared to Dan Brown, yeah.
Yeah.
But then that's a bit like being the tallest dwarf. It's you're still a dwarf. Most of the things that are in the show are just jokes. They have a hidden agenda, as we've established. I'm hoping for extremely sharp drop-off of sales of his books after the programme's broadcast.
He knows what you're up to. He has. I know he's already instigated legal action against some of the statements you've been making. He's written to this programme, and he says, I'll just read out his statement because we're legally obliged to read out his statement. He says here, "The funny man is not a nice man, he is a bad man. He said badness about the famous writer, he made the famous writer sad."
Well, and there are three intentions for this programme. Reach out to Russell Brand in a covert way to communicate an incoherent message. Secondly, to somehow invoke some essence of Adrian Chiles, I don't know what or how. And thirdly, to annihilate the Amazon chart position of Dan Brown.
Now, on the show, you disrespected Ashadi and the So Solid crew. And although at the time you think you may have got away with it, unfortunately, we got this voice message on our producer's voicemail.
Hello, this is Craig from the So Solid crew. This is a message for Stewart Lee, so you better listen up, Stewart Lee. We saw that thing you done on TV about Ashadi, right? I want you to know that he was really upset about it. He was crying and really angry and felt betrayed by the things you said, right? And you are lucky that he don't come round with a knife and stab your pillows and your cushions and your bum and all of those things. So why don't you think about what you say before you say it, Stewart Lee, and think about the consequences? Or you might find that someone has come round and stabbed all your pillows.
No, I don't believe for a moment that that was a real member of the So Solid crew. I think that you're trying to give the illusion of balance on the BBC by fabricating a false voice of dissent. You know what? There's only 4 things I wanted out of this programme, right? One was,
here we go. Yeah,
one
go
was
on.
to
Yeah.
try and send out some kind of message. I'm not sure what it was to Russell Brand. Secondly, to
The Adrian Charles thing.
yeah. Thirdly, to try and reduce, just to some extent, the sales of Dan Brown's books. And fourthly, it was to try and bring the So Solid crew back into prominence. I know that they're a 10 years ago group that have split up and the young kids have forgotten about them. But for me, they were really taking British hip-hop in an interesting direction in the late 90s. And I think it's a shame that Dee has gone into acting and writing. I think he could have been a significant figure like Gil Scott-Heron or Chuck D or someone like that. And I think by trying to do a joke about them, what I would really hope is not that people would laugh at it or they'd be annoyed, but they would go, So Solid crew, they were taking British hip-hop in an interesting direction. What happened to them? Let's have a whip round, see if we can't get them to come out again and drive around.
You've pressed the red button. Now, here's something of no value.
Stuart, the show was about television. You seem to have a very, very low opinion of television. So, why are we here?
Well, I think that the series is aimed, if it's aimed at anyone, it's aimed at people that think they don't really like television or comedy. The problem then, where we've shot ourselves in the foot, is how do you get those people that think they don't like comedy or television to watch a comedy programme on television? And I think if there's a flaw, if there's a gaping and obvious flaw in the whole conceit of this project, it's that. It's that it's aimed at people that are not interested in the medium on which it is being transmitted.
There are lots of accusations about fakery in television. How do you respond to accusations that you were miming your stand-up routine now?
Well, miming is a very strong word to use. At worst, what was happening is that I was going out and moving my mouth to a pre-recorded track of me saying the words.
The accusation is that that wasn't a recording of your voice. It was a recording of John Culshaw doing your voice.
Well, it was felt by people higher up at the chain of command in the BBC that John Culshaw is a voice that people feel at ease with on some level, and they're familiar with him from Dead Ringers. The problem is, where does that end? And as you know, my voice has been stripped off this interview now.
Yes.
And replaced with a recording of John Culshaw doing an impression of my voice. I've often said that success in television is not about what you're prepared to hold on to, but it's about what you're prepared to give away, what trade-offs, what compromises are there.
Okay, well, bearing that in mind,
Yeah.
how did you react to the news that because of reduced ratings for the series so far, the shows from next week onwards are going to have you physically, but your voice replaced with John Culshaw doing George Bush?
Well, I think it might be funnier, but will it make any sense? Will it make sense for my anecdotes about my life to be done by John Culshaw in the voice of a Texan man? We don't know. It's not ideal, but it's give and take, isn't it? You know, you make a concession towards the BBC and you hope that you get back a little bit of what it was you wanted.
Now, some of my favourite shots in this particular episode are of all the faces, the face type things in the audience, sort of laughing, their sort of mouths going up and down, opening and shutting, and that sound of laughing. How was that achieved?
It's all puppetry. It's all puppetry. But there were basically local schools were approached, and we tried to involve the community in Hackney. And kids were given sponges and oranges and grapefruits and asked to kind of slit them to make mouths and draw faces on them. And then they were to come and sit in the half-light and dimly lit. We just tried to get the lights to a low enough level where those grapefruits and sponges and oranges could pass for human faces, and the children operated them. It was all different kids, all different from all different cultural backgrounds, all having fun together, pretending to be an exclusively white audience. The lighting level was a constant hassle because if it had been any higher, they would have been revealed as just a sort of chorus of speaking fruit.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that the community were involved, and the BBC has a lot of criticism. It's distant from ordinary people. Well, it isn't. It got a load of ordinary people, and it said to them, can you hunch up in the dark and at the point that you're whipped, can you make a bit of fruit look like it's laughing? And if that isn't working with ordinary people, then I'd like to know what is.
Now, we have to be truthful about everything on television, including your mistakes and your outtakes, so that everyone at home can get a sense of everything that was being recorded, so there's no pulling the wool over anyone's eyes, right? So are you happy for these to go
Absolutely.
out?
I mean, I think often one of the funniest bits of any programme is actually the bits that don't make the cut.
That's right,
you know,
I know.
And
then you sort of wonder why they don't put them in.
And,
you know, it's stupid that they've taken
they
them
don't
out.
use that.
It's almost like they don't know what they're doing.
I know,
they're putting in stuff that's less funny,
than the
than
things
the
that
stuff
have been
they've
cut.
taken out.
So
they're idiots.
If it was up to me,
Yeah.
the whole programme would be thrown in a bin. And burn and replaced with the bits that were cut out. And I'm really glad they finally got an airing, because to me they're the bits when they're the best bits, not the bits that were worked on and written and carefully thought about, just things where someone swore or said the wrong word.
Okay, well let's take a look.
I had another blank there, so I'm just going to look at. If you're near the front, you can see I've got loads of cues written on my hand here. I've got a lot to remember tonight. This show I've talked about Russell Brand and Dan Brown, celebrity hardbacks, and if you're near the front now, you can see I'm just doing hand there, hand. Talk about what's on my hand. Yeah. That still hasn't come to me. A man's handed me a piece of paper here, which has a lot of information on it, although none of it was what I was hoping to see. So we'll come back and do a pick-up of that at the end of the show as a concession to the falsehood of television. Well, it's going well, wasn't it? My idea for these shows was I wanted to recreate as accurately as possible the genuine atmosphere of doing a live gig, but now it's with some relief that I realise that I haven't done that. In a live gig, this would be an appalling situation. I feel I've lost the trust of the crowd now. Oh no, it's come back. Oh, even more trust than there was before. Peaking, ebbing away. That's like a heckle, but it's patronising, isn't it? That's like someone going, go on, you're all right. Go on, Stu. Go on, try and speak. Try and speak a coherent sentence, go on. You can do it. Go on, Stu. Go on, try and speak this bit. Oh, all right. All right, you badgered me into it. But what happened to Ant and Dec? They used to be great, didn't they? And now they preside over I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. They harm insects. They humiliate vulnerable celebrities. They teach us to fear nature. Could it be flinging insects into the berry brown face of Robert Kilroy's sink? Sink.
that could probably be dubbed in an edit. But I'd have to go in and sit in a room saying the word silk over and over again. It'd be tedious beyond imagination. I'll go back now and correct it. Once again, this could be removed in the edit, or it could be kept in as a postmodern commentary on television. But of course, it would go against the grain of the BBC's current commitment to honesty in broadcasting. He clearly fabricated something that was obviously a mistake. That's probably in breach of some sort of guideline, although they keep changing. It's a very difficult time to be making television for anyone who's interested, and it's Jonathan Ross's fault.
There is an outtake in one of the shows when you're meant to be talking about Kilroy Silk, but you actually say Kilroy Sink.
Oh yes, I remember
And
that.
I was just wondering why you said that.
Well, I think that there was a lot to remember, and I was hot and tired and under a lot of stress, and I think I just got one of the letters in the word wrong. I don't think it.
Well,
meant
no,
anything.
I'm not so sure, because a neighbour of yours was found dead that week, and he's called Roy Sink.
If you're suggesting that a mistake that I made on live television is actually a clue to an unsolved crime, then I think that you might want to think very carefully about what it is that you're saying. Because I
have thought.
I wasn't. Mr. Sink and I had some disagreements about the fence, and also I objected to the fact that he had, in contravention of the conservation area legislation, put a huge metal advertisement for his building on the outside of my wall, because he was the leaseholder of the building. But to say that I would go so far as to surprise him in an alleyway and attack him and kill him, and then try and conceal the body is insane. And then also to go further and suggest that I would betray that by messing up his name with Robert Kilroy Silk on television is frankly ludicrous.
Nobody's saying
that. I know
Nobody's saying anything.
That,
Nobody's saying anything.
Not saying anything.
That's all. No. And just finally, we noticed that you've also submitted to the producer of the series titles of other television shows that you would like to maybe take up to the commissioning team at the BBC.
Yeah.
And we just wondered if you could give us an insight into what some of these ideas were. Stewart Lee Just Wants to Dance.
I've noticed as a lot of these dancing programmes have been very popular, and I thought, was there some way that I could combine me, Stewart Lee, with the idea of dance? And so I thought of the title, Stewart Lee Just Wants to Dance.
Give me the lifestyle of St Augustine with Stewart Lee.
I'm very much hope to make that. I know that everyone at home, people are always interested in the exact details of the day-to-day lifestyle of ancient religious figures. And to see someone ill-equipped to survive those restrictions, forced to take them on, I think would be enjoyable for anyone. Basically, I see it as a kind of ecclesiastical version of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, except the flinging of insects would be replaced with the reading of psalms and the tolling of bells.
Stewart Lee's Pineapple Ballads.
Well, we all love ballads, don't we? And we all like pineapples. And hopefully after this series, a lot of people would like me. And I thought, well, what better way of combining all those three things than in a programme called Stewart Lee's Pineapple Ballads?
Stewart Lee's Involuntary Euthanasia Dance Calculator.
Yeah, well, that's really just a collision of random words. But at this stage, I'd reached the point where I just thought, I'll just write down anything and see what happens. It's like throwing shit against a wall.
With Stewart Lee.
You've pressed the red button. Now, here's something of no value.
Stuart, I was really pleased that this week's show was about, has political correctness gone mad? Because, like you, I think it has. In fact, it's gone so mad that you probably can't even say the phrase political correctness has gone mad these days. You'd have to say something like political correctness has gone mentally challenged.
Yeah, you would, yeah.
Kofi Annan would look at himself in a slimming mirror because he'd become very concerned about being overweight, and he was overweight, Kofi Annan, as a result of his habit of starting every day with a breakfast of a coffee and a naan. Kofi Annan every day, a coffee and a naan. Coffee and naan. What would you like for breakfast, Kofi Annan? Yes, please.
There were some serious issues raised by the programme.
Right.
First of all, coffee and a naan. What other UN Secretary Generals could you make that joke about?
None.
No? Ban Ki-moon?
No, I
No?
don't think so. What?
Ban Ki-moon?
Ban Ki-moon? That's not a food, is it?
No, does it have to be a food?
Well, it does fit for it to fit in to that bit.
I was thinking of a bank on the moon.
A bank on the moon. Well, he could have done that.
Yeah.
He could have gone if he'd gone a bank on the. Be a different episode. I mean, you know, it wasn't. It was a flimsy idea, Kofi Annan, right? And then the more I did it, I thought this is so pointless. If it's done at enough length, it may become funny. But
it has now gone too far.
it has gone too far.
To the extent that the United Nations have passed a resolution at the Security Council.
Right.
Imposing sanctions on you.
On me?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'm not allowed to have food or weapons.
You can have food for weapons, I think.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right. Trade-off.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, no offence was meant by it. Again, I mean, there's no... If there's... Whatever the purpose of this series is, it certainly wasn't to cause offence to Kofi Annan, who I think should have... I mean, I think he should have been made just like a fascist dictator of the world, and then everything would have been in a lot better state. He seems like a great bloke. The only problem is that, rather like Bush had a shoe thrown at him to discredit him, I can imagine if he were the king of the world and people were furious with him, he may have coffee spat at him and naans thrown at him.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just as well he isn't.
It's just as well he isn't, yeah.
As you said, fascist dictator
Of the world.
Yeah.
Good.
Now, these days, I mean, you equate political correctness with health and safety legislation, which I found very amusing, but it's also quite apt, isn't it? Because you can't stab someone these days without having to fill in a form first.
No.
Or wear a hard hat.
Or wear a hard hat, yeah.
Just watching the show, I thought good on you. You know, you sort of nailed it, and you know that lot and what they tell you to do. And
well, it's a. I mean, one of the most popular programmes on BBC Two is Top Gear, and I thought, if there's some way we can get that audience chuckling along
within this first series. But I imagine it doesn't really go much further than what you've covered already in the first 3 shows.
No.
So does that mean that by the end of this first series, you would have more or less said all that you want to say about stuff that exists?
Not only have I said everything that I want to say, I've said everything that I can say. And what I need to happen now is I need some personal crisis to happen to me so that I've got something to write about in the future.
Okay.
But it's difficult to know how to move forwards. I mean, what helped me before when I'd run out of ideas was being involved in Jerry Springer the Opera, being a focus of a protest, gave me lots of ideas to write about what that was like. So basically something really bad needs to happen.
So for the sake of the second series, which is prevalent really, is preeminent, would you go out and harm someone, kidnap someone, fall in love with, marry, and then reject someone, bury someone, in order to generate material that you could draw from?
Well, that's 4 things.
Well, that's 4 shows.
I know. I need
so
another 2.
So you only need 2 more, and you've got a second
and
series.
I'll be all right.
Yeah.
If I do the things you suggested, I'm basically, I become an outsider in society. I'll be on the run from justice.
Yes.
It would be
gives
hard.
it more of a reality feel.
I know, but it would be hard to make a programme under those circumstances as a sort of fugitive. It would be difficult to evade capture and yet also turn up filming and rehearsal on a regular basis.
Well, that assumes that you sort of commit this sequence of crimes badly and leave so many clues that we all know it's you. Whereas if you're clever and put a lot of preparation and thought into, maybe get other people involved in it, and you know, I mean, I know a guy who for like $7 grand can, do you know what I mean? But no one would actually know that
someone would piece it together though, watching the programme.
But watching the programme, so the programme will have gone out by then, so that's fine. That's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I've got that level of commitment.
Okay. Just a thought. Just a thought. I mean, it's up to you, Stewart, really. I mean, either you're in this for the long term or you're not. You know, either you've got to show commitment So this is a sort of professional, ongoing
Yeah,
career.
it's I don't know. It's something I'd have to think about.
Okay.
Yeah,
All I'm saying is the BBC needs to know
Yeah.
by this time next week whether you will kill someone for a second series.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Right.
Just to weigh up this.
And who is it?
I'm told it's sort of in the balance, and
Right.
this one thing will just,
Right.
it will give it that. I think the word they used was edge.
Edge.
It will give it
Oh,
that.
they like
edge.
edgy stuff, don't they?
Yeah.
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 But
I mean,
as
the
I say-
important thing is, I'm approaching that age like Tony Blair or Frank Skinner, where you start to think about your legacy.
Yes.
What is my legacy?
Yes.
And is my legacy that this series? We don't know if this series has been well received or not.
No.
I don't know.
No.
Or would my legacy be as the man who killed and committed crimes to get a second series?
Well-
Would I look back on this and think I regret carrying out those crimes in order to secure a second series? Or would I think I was really onto something then? And it's difficult to know, you know.
But I was in a minicab a few months ago, and the cab driver turned round to me, apropos of nothing, and he said that in his opinion, the most oppressed minority in the world today were I'll say that again, because I fumbled it, and that's one of the beauties of recording things rather than broadcasting live. In many ways, that's the purpose of what we're trying to achieve tonight, a seamless television programme in which you are just lab rats. Although, of course, under the BBC's new Charter of Scrupulous Honesty, what I'm about to do is illegal. Political correctness gone mad. I was in a black cab, which I always feel is more likely to carry a driver of reactionary opinions than a minicab. So it was worth doing a retake, if only for that. Character development of the man. Previously, he was a minicab driver. People thinking, well, some of them were all right. But now I've said he was a black cab driver, you're already primed to dislike him. You've pressed the red button. Now, here's something of no value.
Stewart, this week's show was about finance, really, and all the financial trouble there is in the world. As executive producer of the show, I had to sit you down at the end of that recording that we've just watched and explain to you that because of the economic climate and as constraints within the BBC's own budget, that you wouldn't be receiving a fee for that show.
Well, I'm happy with that, and because I think that one of the great things about this country is that there's public broadcasting, and I think it's a privilege and a pleasure to work for the BBC, and I would rather pay to work for the BBC than be paid to work for an independent broadcaster. I see it as my duty to find other work to subsidise my ongoing possibility of BBC work.
Okay, so do you have a second job at the moment?
Well, I've been working driving a little tractor around sort of on Hackney Marshes, getting stuff out of the way for the Olympics to be built.
Are there other people that one would think of as being quite comfortably well off, who in fact you see doing other
Well, there's
jobs?
a common misconception with the public that everyone that you see on television is doing really well. Actually, a lot of the time you have to do other work to subsidise it. Alvin Stardust, who was in Hollyoaks for a long time, he's doing similar, he builds little walls and things for where the Olympic stadiums will be. He's not qualified to finish the whole structures off, but he can do some of the basic foundation work. He's there. And Patrick Moore as well. Is just cut some of the grass in the area. Well, there's a lot of work needed for that project, and a lot of it's cash in hand. And when we're there, we sleep in the toilet block overnight, so that we can maximise the hours for the next day.
Now, if I were to tell you that I pocketed your fee to enhance my fee as executive producer on this show, how would you feel then?
Well, I'd feel happy again, because I think it's just such a privilege to be working for the BBC alongside talents like David Attenborough and Adrian Chiles. To be in that company, and yourself,
and me,
is fine. And I don't expect anything from it at all.
And I just wondered if you could rank my talent alongside David Attenborough and Adrian Chiles.
You were the third in that
Oh,
trinity of people.
really? And there's is there any way that we could change that, or that you could be persuaded to?
Well, David
rank
Attenborough's
him
position
higher?
is unassailable. Adrian Charles, I don't think he's got a sell-by date. I don't know. I think it's where it is. Yeah.
David Attenborough unassailable.
Yeah, he's an unassailable position of he is the BBC. Sums it all up. Yeah.
There's no way. You honestly think there's no way that I can have more, I couldn't have more talent than David Attenborough?
Not without expanding your portfolio to include insect work.
Okay, well if I'm happy to do that, but I just cannot imagine a world in which it's impossible to conceive of me being less popular than David Attenborough. I just find that unfathomable.
Well, you know, what can I say? That's...
All right. Well, what we'll do is we'll take your comments earlier and we'll just re-edit it
Oh,
to
fine,
make it
good.
sound like
Yep.
I was better than them. But how possible is it for a man to rent out his anal passage?
Viewers will be interested to know that that is real footage of a colonoscopy, and because of the current climate, the BBC didn't want to pay out to hire any in or buy any in, and it's actually footage that was donated by a friend of one of the people working on the crew who was going for a colonoscopy and just asked if he could have the tape. So that is
So
genuine.
hang on. So it's not actually the actors.
No, it's
live
not the actors. It's not Miles Jupp's.
investigation.
It's not Miles Jupp's internal organs that we're seeing there. It's those of a friend.
Well, that's
of the-
something we have to actually make clear from
we
the
have
start.
to make it clear, but I also thought people would be interested in the fact that it wasn't just brought in willy-nilly. That was actually donated by someone connected with the production.
Yes, but you know what's going to happen. I mean, all hell is going to break loose unless that programme is preceded with a warning from the BBC saying viewers may like to know that the scenes set in a colon in the following programme are not of the actor Miles Jupp.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a bit like when Stephen Fry was supposed to be driving around America in his taxi, and they had to put this thing up at the beginning saying, this isn't his actual taxi, it's one we got in America that is the same, because the cost of shipping it over would have been prohibitive. You could make an announcement about it being the colon, interior shots of the colon of someone other than the actor. You could do that, but I don't think that anyone at home is realistically expecting us to have rigged up the whole little camera thing so that we could see the inside of Miles Jupp's organs. If every sketch where you see an internal investigation of someone has to actually be actual footage of the internal organs of that actor, then it's going to be pretty much impossible to make any television.
Yes,
for
but that
near
is
future.
the current climate. I mean, for example, autopsies now have to be actual autopsies of the actors playing the part of the person being.
Well, it's a very short-sighted policy. I
toxified.
don't, I mean, I think people understand what acting is, and acting is, acting and making a programme are about, you use certain sleights of hand. So what? It wasn't internal footage of Miles Jupp's internal organs.
Car crash is another one. In a drama, if there's a car crash, then those actors genuinely have to.
Well, it's not going to work.
They cut the cable. They basically cut the cable on the brakes.
There's a lot of actors. There's a glut of them in many ways, but we're not.
Which is why it's fine to lose two in a take.
You can't treat people like that.
You ship another two in, if you want to do a retake.
Well, if the public are saying that every time there's, an act of violence on television, an actual actor has to be killed.
Yeah.
What progress have we made since the Roman Colosseum, when people were murdered and killed in the pursuit of entertainment? Someone's got to draw a line in the sand and say, obviously there's a certain amount of sleight of hand and of freedom with the truth. And if the point at which that starts is the internal colonoscopy footage in this programme, then great, I'm glad to have put that on the agenda.
Now, because of the current climate, we've got to try and make as much money. We've got to basically recoup the cost of the programme. We're still under. We're still in the red. So we have to come up with as many money-making schemes as possible. The first thing we want to do is just do... I just wondered if you could sing a Stewart Lee ringtone that we could then sell online. Have you got any catchphrases?
Well, there aren't any catchphrases in it.
No?
I mean, that's another oversight. There's no repetition. There's no catchphrases.
It's political
There's
correctness gone mad.
Well, in week 3, that gets said a lot, but you know, it's not a phrase that I came up with. I mean,
a comprehensive, was it, study of its
in
causes?
week 1, yeah, week 2, a comprehensive study of its causes.
I mean, that'd be ideal if you did that in a sort of funny voice right now.
It's just not something that can be stripped for its assets.
Oh, I know, but if you could.
Yeah. What, the phrase a comprehensive study of its causes?
In a funny voice.
A comprehensive study of its causes. I think that would be a good ringtone.
That would be a good ringtone.
Yeah, all right, fine.
Yeah. And that will net us up to £400 or £500.
Wow.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. Within a month.
Right.
Okay, and just a final question. I have £10. What would you do for it?
For £10?
Yeah.
Well, I'd be prepared to source some of the footage of my own colonoscopic investigations and sell that onto the BBC.
You've pressed the red button. Now, here's something of no value.
So, Stuart, religion. It's a hot potato, but what filling would you put on that potato?
Baked beans and cheese.
Is that your favourite filling?
It's not my favourite thing, but I think it'd be the most appropriate to the religious hot potato. As far as I know, there's no, well, I was about to say there's no religions that have restrictions on those two products, but of course cheese is a dairy product. There may be some aspects of Judaism that couldn't eat that, so I guess just beans. Just beans, basically, just something that, you know, I'm not going to sit here and when you say to me, what filling should there be in the hot potato of religion, I don't want to say like tuna, because lots of people can't eat that, or pork, lots of people can't eat that, because I don't want to have to then deal with a flood of complaints where people say, he said religion was a hot potato, and then for the filling, he said that there should be something in it which is prohibited by various religious groups. But as far as I know, there isn't a religion that has issues with beans.
But how about hatred and a dash of lies?
You're asking me to talk in terms of the filling as a kind of metaphor for something, as a concept, and both of the things you've said, hatred and lies, suggest that you're looking at religion in a pejorative way, and that's not the intention of this programme. So I wouldn't fill the potato with hatred and lies. I wouldn't fill it with tuna fish or pork or any kind of dairy product or anything. It's beans, 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 beans.
How would you respond to the criticism then that you're being a pussy?
Why would people... You're thinking of John Gaunt, aren't you, specifically, who I know when he at weekends runs a baked potato stand in Southend, and he deliberately tries to fill those potatoes with as many with fillings that will annoy people from different faith groups, and he does that to prove some obtuse political point, and his sales of potatoes are negatively impacted on as a result of that. If you're asking me to run a non-profit making baked potato stand just to prove some kind of point about freedom of speech, what a petty-minded waste of time. Now,
you and Richard Dawkins are both well known for being atheists. But is that because atheism sells very well?
It is. I mean, it's interesting. Like, initially, when I first did jokes about religion 20 years ago, it was something that I cared about. Now I don't. In fact, I've moved my position towards agnosticism at worst. But it's become a really workable market. At the end of the day, we have to think of ourselves as brands. How are we going to consolidate those brands? And the way you do it is by taking whatever position would appear to be the most commercially successful. And I mean, I know that Dawkins himself has had a number of supernatural experiences involving ghosts and enchanted animals, but they're not things that he chooses to talk about because he's very much closely aligned with that position. We've seen this throughout entertainment history. That people will, hang on to a position long after they've outlived it intellectually because the market is there to work. Ronnie Barker, for example, was not an overweight man by the end of his life, but he continued to work in a fat suit in order to be able to play the kind of characters that he was closely associated with. It was too late to change. He knew the market he was working.
And neither is Ronnie Corbett short.
Well, Ronnie Corbett isn't short. Ronnie Corbett just had a late growth spurt and is now 6'4". But if he was to turn up like that, all the work that he gets playing dwarves at Christmas at parties and things. My old management, they had a Christmas party where Ronnie Corbett was there as dressed as a dwarf, giving out truffles and things. A Christmas dwarf. He was 6'2", he had a late growth spurt. It was ridiculous, but because it was Ronnie Corbett, we kind of bought into the idea that he was small. It's almost like it played a trick on you. You know, in fact, a lot of the work that he did of the distribution of mince pies and things, whilst dressed as a Christmas dwarf, he was required to stand at the very end of a long room with a kind of tapered floor that gave him a false perspective, so that he would look smaller, but as you approached him, his true height became immediately apparent. But that's a good example of someone in entertainment becoming known for a particular position and sticking to it, to work their market in the face of the facts.
Do you think there is a somewhere else, an ether?
I think there's definitely somewhere else, yeah.
I haven't finished
Oh, sorry,
explaining what it is that
yeah.
I think you might think there might be something of. There is a somewhere else, another plane. Actually, I have finished.
Yeah. Well, I think there might be somewhere else, yeah, definitely.
And is that something that concerns you? Or?
No. I'm quite. I mean, if you've got a cardboard box on a table and it's shut, what's inside it?
Tramp?
Well, possibly, but somewhere else is inside it, and like, it would be a fool that said there isn't somewhere else, because there might be. Well, there might not be as well. And I think if people take...
rubbish.
No, if people take one thing away from this programme, from this week's programme, I'd like them to entertain the possibility that there may or may not be somewhere else. That's what it's driving towards.
There may or may not be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you're not prepared to be any clearer
No,
on,
I think that it's
whether there is or isn't?
I think it's something people have to think about for themselves, you know, and I think that's the purpose of art, is to ask questions and not necessarily answer.
So is the red button, as it were, a metaphor for another dimension?
It is, yeah. I mean, what I don't understand is where is this? So people are watching the red button now, but where's this content?
I don't know.
Is it on the telly, right, or is it flying around like in rays in the atmosphere, and the red button somehow clicks onto it? Where's it coming from? Where's it stored? Like, it's absolutely beyond me. I mean, I'm quite frightened to be red button content, because I don't think you should ever appear as content in a format that you don't even understand. It seems like it's asking for trouble. Like, you know, you wouldn't submit to an operation that had not been explained to you. Also, if someone presses the red button and I'm on holiday in another country, do I then get like sucked in to the television and have to do this?
I think contractually you're obliged, while the red button is up there, you're obliged wherever you are to respond to whatever anybody
to the
says
demands of a member of the public.
Yes.
For more content.
Yes.
But I'm not a content provider.
Well, you are.
I'm not what it says on my passport, content provider.
You've signed a piece of paper that said, yes, I agree to the red button.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that means the BBC now has everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Unlimited content. When I decided to sort of absent myself from society 20 years ago to become a writer and a performer, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't go, I'm a content provider. What are you going to be? Content provider. You know, Shakespeare wasn't a content provider, was he? News, is news content or is it news?
News is observation about content and then commentary on content.
At what point does content become fact? At what point does content become art, or is it all just content?
Content must never become fact.
When the programme's not on anymore and no one can press the red button to access the extra content, where does the content go?
I don't know. All I know that is they are constructing an enormous red button at the bottom of the sea, and that's where it's all going to be placed.
You know when you go to like a remote Scottish island,
yes,
and in the middle of it there's a kind of circle of wheeling gulls.
Yes.
And you think, what are they? What are they?
Exactly.
What's underneath
What's
that?
under? Exactly.
Content.
Yeah.
Now, one of the nice things about doing the show was I was able to choose who I wanted as warm-ups. You have when you're doing TV recordings, you have like a warm-up person to go on in between and at the beginning when transmission breaks down, and it's good to have people with lots of jokes normally. To keep it moving, but the acts I like tend not to be like that, and I've sort of broke with the logic of warm-up man tradition by choosing as my warm-up one of my favourite acts who doesn't even speak English as a first language. He's a German comedian called Henning Wenn. Henning came to Britain to work as a marketing manager for Wycombe Wanderers Football Club. Pretty soon, he realised that his future lay elsewhere. He went into a comedy club and decided that even speaking in his second language, he could do better than some of the acts he's seen. And he's brought a stereotypical forensic German intelligence to bear on his observations of British life. But you're going to see some clips of him now, culled from his little warm-up sessions here. I urge you to go and see him in full effect. Here's some bits of Henning Venn.
Hello. Hello. Ooh, yeah, hello. Yeah, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Henning, and I am the German comedy ambassador. It's not the easiest of jobs. And the British always say we Germans don't have a sense of humour. I don't find that funny. But anyway, off we go. Are you all in a good mood? That's jawohl. Jawohl, yeah, and I'm not in a good mood. Had another nightmare yesterday. I was visiting my mate Horst in hospital. He swallowed a sponge. He says it doesn't hurt, but he's always thirsty. Did you get that? Yeah, he said it doesn't hurt, but she's always thirsty. Funny, funny, funny. Yeah, there is one golden rule in German humour. Always start with your best joke. That is what I just did. Yeah. I mean, I must admit I've never ever done stand-up back home. Never ever. Reason being, I'm not good enough to cut it in Germany. Whilst over here in Britain, bloody easy. If you want to have success as a stand-up here in Britain, all you have to do, loads of swearing. So in Germany, we don't swear at all. Reason being, things work. You know it's true. Dear, oh dear. Let's better check. Yeah, so far we had 1 minute and 31 seconds of jolliness. Yeah. And counting. Yeah. Yeah, they always say timing is the secret of comedy, don't they? I'm not sure if everybody understands how important timing is for good comedy. So probably I can prove that by performing a sketch now. Yeah, I'll be two people, one at a time. Person one, is there any football on the box tonight? Yes. Austria, Hungary. Against whom? Yeah, that one is my favorite joke. Yeah, because that joke is all about timing. No, because if that incident plays between 1867 and 1918, then we're not dealing with a joke at all. Yeah, it's just someone inquiring about the footballing opposition of the dual monarchy on the night. Yeah, but we can rule that out. You remember the first bit where it goes, is there any football on the box tonight? Box is slang for television, which was only invented in the 1930s, well after the end of the Austrian-Hungarian dual monarchy. Hence, it's a joke.
You've pressed the red button. Now, here's something of no value.
Stewart, who told you you were funny?
I think that it's just something that you know. A lot of people
Has
say...
anyone told you you're funny?
Well, Not to my face. I mean, I see things written on walls.
No one
and
has
stuff.
told you you're funny.
Not to my face. I see things written on walls. But I mean, it's a question that comedians are often asked. You know, when did you realise you're funny? A lot of comedians say that they started trying to be funny to escape bullying. But I actually was the bully, and I found that if I could add verbal abuse to the physical abuse that I dealt out to people, it would be much more effective and crushing to them.
So you were like the Joker.
Yeah, in Batman, in many ways, yeah. Like the Joker in Batman, or one of those, you know, or a lot of or any of the other supervillains that are based on comedy concepts. The Riddler as well. My plan all along has been to establish myself, first of all, as a comedian, to get the funny part right, and then to somehow move that into superpowered crime at a later date. And if I could raise a city to the ground or destroy a bank or kidnap loads of orphans, but if I could do that at the same time as it being funny, that to me would be the kind of... I think where the people like the Joker went wrong is because the Joker was a criminal before he tried to be funny.
Yeah. But the thing is, though, that you're not funny.
No, I mean, it's become evident to me watching the programme. I mean, as I watch the rushes, I can see why people would not think I'm funny and why they would be bored. And I'm glad in a way that I've managed to do this series after 20 years of trying to be a comedian, because I've realised that it's not something I'm cut out for. But I think I can just about get away with it enough that when I move into crime, the sort of residue of comedy that I can take with me will give me a little bit of an edge as a career criminal.
Okay, so are you hoping that, because we're now near the end of the series now, are you hoping that the more it underperforms, because it has underperformed in a way that I couldn't have imagined. I was expecting great things, and I was...
you were expecting it to pick up and then fade away, but actually the audience figures just tailed off like a shelf.
I came in with high expectations, and then they went, you are, to use a technical term, you are an anticipantment.
Yeah.
I'm anticipated in you.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you now planning that the decline of your reputation that this series has marked out will force you into become an outlaw or some sort of shadowy figure?
A masked figure of hate.
Figure.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what form those crimes will take, but certainly the degree of violence involved in them will be informed by the level of rejection I felt from the broadcasting industry and the British public.
Will you have a costume?
I will have a costume, yeah.
What kind of costume do you?
Well, it'll be exactly this, but it will be much tighter, and not in a flattering way either. It will be every single unsightly bulge or the very worst aspects of my body will be emphasised by it, and in the places like my left leg where I have permanent scarring from cellulitis, that will be exposed. So I'll look like a kind of squashed, diseased figure, bringing a bitterness and resentment and feeling of rejection to my victims. And people will see me, and I'll just have the centre of my face cut out in the with a tiny, like little strip along there, and they'll just about be able to recognise me, but not well enough. They might think that I'm Terry Christian or Mark Lamar or Roland Gift from the Fine Young Cannibals or Edwin Collins or Ray Liotta or an overweight version of any of those. And while they're confused about who I am, that will buy me the time to strike with absolutely deadly accuracy at them. And while I harm them, I will also be delivering a withering verbal put-down of the kind that I have lashed audiences with in late-night comedy club gigs for the last 2 decades.
And on your chest, would you have SL for Stewart Lee or SDF or squashed, diseased figure?
I'd have none of those things. I would have a picture of a tomato with half of it like rotted away and then its face kind of caving in.
Now, is there not a danger, if that was the case, and you were spotted leaving the scene of a crime or whatever, and that they saw this, that you would be known as semi-rotten tomato boy.
So be it, you know. So be it. I mean, that the naming aspect is not of interest to me. The main thing is that the underperformance of the show has left me with a feeling of bitterness towards the world, and I'm reckless as to what I do to spite it.
Okay. If you were this crime-causing masked figure, would you commit crimes on other comedians? Would you break into Frank Skinner's house?
If they got in my way, I mean, I think
drawers?
someone like Frank Skinner is very interested in his legacy, and I think what he would try and do was, if there was a former comedian who was now a criminal, he would probably try and become a superhero comedian to stop them. So I think that there's every chance that we could see him injecting himself with some kind of serum or subjecting himself to the bite of a radioactive creature in the hope that he would take on his powers. My warning to him, if he's watching, is that he should choose carefully what creature that is, because there's no telling how the powers may manifest themselves.
Yes, because if he took on the powers of a ladybird, for example, I mean, that's not going to be that scary, is it?
Particularly not the traditional English ladybird at the moment, which is being decimated by the French and the American ladybird that's coming in.
Like squirrels. Would you join forces with any other super criminal comedians?
Really, I'd be looking for someone who feels embittered. You know, I don't know who that would be. Roy Walker, maybe.
Have you and Roy?
It's not been discussed yet, but I did see him. I saw him getting out of a cab in Edinburgh last summer near the George Hotel. And there was something about the way that he looked at me like that, which suggested that he had the idea of a degenerate supervillain comedian team-up on his mind, but hadn't thought how best to articulate that. And it's certainly something I'll be following up.
Have you ever had your penis caught in a zip?
I don't think so, but...
is it possible that if you'd have more success as a comedian?
Well, you know, I mean, you need stuff to happen to you, and this is one of the points I'm trying to make in the show. I haven't had my penis caught in a zip. You know, I haven't seen girls with big breasts. I haven't had a homosexual encounter or any of those things. And that by the time I got to filming the end of this series, I've written and I talked about everything that's ever happened to me, and I need some experiences. And I think, I mean, maybe the comedy's something I can come back to after the crimes. You know, if I'm wounded or harmed in some way, ideally in the buttocks or the genitals, which of course are the prime areas for humour of the human body.
Now, you had a real go at the Americans in that show. I mean, some of it was like really near the knuckle with all the American stuff. But we've sold the rights of this show to America.
Yeah.
Who would you like to play Stewart Lee in the American version of Stewart Lee's comedy vehicle USA?
Janine Garofalo. Yeah.
From Larry Sanders.
Larry Sanders.
Yeah. Looking like you, or
no,
looking
really,
like her?
No. And as a woman.
As a woman, yeah.
I think that could give it a spin it needs.
But we can't get her.
Oh, right.
We've got Jodie Foster.
That'd be fine. Okay. Yeah. I mean, she's very versatile.
Is she? I've never seen her do comedy, but
Well,
but then none of us seen you do comedy either.
Yeah.
Where do you get your ideas from? Is it a ditch?
No, it's from, I get old the Goodies books that they used to put out.
Goodies Book of Records?
Goodies Book of Records, Goodies Book of Disaster Movies.
Yes.
And they get the ideas from there and just change the nouns a bit. Yeah.
And that somehow hasn't worked?
No, nonetheless, no. I mean, I don't know at whose feet to lay the blame.
The feet of Oddie, Garden and Taylor.
They're 6 feet.
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff we had to cut from the shows, which was you riding around on a tricycle on your own.
Alone, yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, I missed the point that 3 people on a 3-seater bike, funny. One man, it just creates a feeling of loneliness. No one wants to see that.
Do you want to talk about the Apple sketch?
Well, the problem with the Apple sketch is that, like, at the point where it was supposed to stop, when Gail Brand came in and played the trombone, they just started messing around and running around the studio, and everyone like was trying to stop them.
I know.
Just out of control, and it looks idiotic. And it's
a call went up the chain of command.
Yeah.
Right up to the Director General's office. saying we've got a sketch. It's gone out of control, and nothing can stop it.
But I mean, the now I understand that very strong measures have been put in place to stop that ever happening again. Also, it's just such a waste of apples. One of the things that was great about doing the series was I was able to sort of choose people that I wanted to have on for warm-ups, the acts that go on when there's breakdowns in transmission, or try and get the audience going. And I was able to use one of my favourite acts, which is Stephen Carlin. He's a Scottish guy. I toured with him for about 4 months in 2005. I think he's really brilliant. He has the kind of dry, sophisticated, elegant and beautifully written material that has no place on television. So it's going to be a real treat for you to see something this good, I think. He's unique amongst comics, really, in that he's able to talk about sport without seeming like an ignorant lout. He knows his way around politics and popular culture. And he's also something of an engineering expert. On a long road trip between gigs in Edinburgh and Aberdeen, Steve was able to take me along a road which is known amongst engineers for having the worst adverse camber in Britain. It's that kind of intelligence and attention to detail that he's also brought to bear on his work. Ladies and gentlemen, some highlights from the warm-up offcuts of Stephen Carlin.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to be in this. This is a beautiful room, as Stewart said. It is a big improvement on my first ever gig, I've got to say. My first performance, I don't know if you know, probably haven't heard, but it was 5 years old actually, my first gig as such. It was a school nativity play, and I played the part of Joseph in my school nativity, Joseph Stalin. So, unfortunately, I was a bit of a method actor in those days. That's right, so one or two of my classmates did die. Needlessly. But anyway, let's not dwell on the crimes of Joseph Stalin this evening. Probably the deaths of 20 million people, not an appropriate start for Stuart Lee's comedy vehicle. You know, keep it nice and light and upbeat. So thought just instead I'd just kick off by starting to talk about hurricanes in America. Because probably like me, you have been looking forward to the new hurricane season in America. Not specifically for the destruction that will be unleashed. I think primarily just to see which names the Americans are going to give their hurricanes this year. Because see what you like about the Americans, they do love to name hurricanes. And I think, you know, things like Hurricane Hannah, Hurricane Ike, I think fair play to them. That's good customer service, nice personal touch, because we don't bother naming weather systems in Britain at all, do we? Not in Britain we tend to say things like, oh, yeah, you remember those high winds? That time. But I think the worst thing about American culture must surely be America's over-reliance on superheroes instead of more conventional emergency services. I've known this for quite a few years, actually, because you might recall the Buncefield fuel depot fire. A few years ago, the fuel depot in Hemel Hempstead went on fire. It was the largest fire in post-Second World War Europe. Explosion could be heard in France. What do we do in Britain? We got the fire brigade to put that out using foam. Yeah, very good. Now, very similar situation occurred, you might recall, in the documentary Superman 3. When an oil refinery caught fire, and what did the Americans do? What was their approach? Well, they thought somehow it would be a good idea, firstly, to get Superman to fly to a lake, then to get him to freeze that lake with his breath by blowing on it, then to pick up his one sheet of ice, right, with no regard to any of the wildlife living in that lake whatsoever, to pick up the ice, fly to the refinery with it, drop it on the fire. Now, I must have been only about 7 years old, I reckon, when I seen that movie, and even I knew at that age that you don't put water on an oil fire. Wait, what was the correct approach? What should Superman correctly have done? Well, Superman should have got himself a giant tea towel the size of an oil refinery, so I reckon something in the dimensions of about 3 miles by 3 miles ought to do the trick. Dip that in the lake, lift it out, wring it so it's damp but not dripping wet. So follow the guidelines. Then to carefully place that over the oil refinery, thus smothering the flames. But I suppose the concept of a giant tea towel was just ruled out by the producers as being too ridiculous, too far-fetched and too unbelievable aim for a Superman film. So I think that's the moment when Superman and I parted company, to be honest with you. I don't like Superman anymore. Don't like the man, because I'll tell you why. He's reactive, he's not proactive. Superman wouldn't do very well in today's business world, let me tell you. He's been flounder at his 6-month appraisal, gets slapped down. Because his whole approach is, you wait until something goes drastically wrong, and people's lives are in threat, and then he thinks that would be a good point to spring into action, to do something about not at all interested in that whole key preventative side of the emergency business. I mean, basically my ideal Superman film would be a film in which there was no one in danger, in which there was no one in peril, in which there were no rescues, just 2.5 hours of Superman touring like a succession of factories and then handing out health and safety advice. My favourite drink of choice is whiskey. I like Scotch whiskey, a national drink. I like the way it makes you feel a bit dizzy after a few. You start banging into bits of furniture. Yeah, I like the way that it makes you a bit indiscreet. You start making 1 or 2 inappropriate remarks. I like the way that at 3 in the morning, you can be standing at a bar with a complete stranger discussing how tomorrow you will set up a company together. And let me tell you, I used to be a Marks and Spencer's skeptic, okay? I didn't used to believe in Marks and Spencer's as a shop. I didn't think it offered anything for me, but I found out recently that Marks and Spencer's sell whiskey in cans. That's right, Marks and Spencer's, for all places, sell whiskey in metal cans. Basically, it's like a Red Bull can with whiskey in it and then mixed with ginger ale. Ideal for that busy alcoholic on the move. Or if you like drinking whiskey but feel that drinking out a glass just has too much inherent dignity,